Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of InkResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service providing insider news and knowledge to investors. Welcome back to our U.S. post-election show.
Well, it's great to be back in what's turning out to be a bit of a new era for the United States.
Donald Trump's victory speech, I thought, was very pleasant. Some people have told me who have done business with Donald, they said that's what you should expect, that he wouldn't have been successful if he was mean to everybody.
Well, look, I think he's going to change the channel here. He was on the, first we saw the primary channel, then we saw the general election channel, and now we're going to see the presidential channel. And I think you will see quite a difference. Now, look, Jim, we talked about this last week here on the show, that there was a possibility of a GOP sweep. There were few people in Canada willing to even discuss that. And, thanks to media outlets like yours, you do get a very divergent views from the mainstream media, I think, in terms of what's going on. And, when you sit back here and look at what's going on, the real, the obvious loser in this whole journey of Donald Trump to the White House has to be the mainstream media, who missed this boat by, a long shot, and were just really irrelevant, as it turned out, in the whole scheme of things. So, when you're talking about winners and losers, that's the big loser that comes to mind right away. And I think there has to be a lot of soul searching in the mainstream media, and it's really shows how important channels like HowStreet.com are to get alternative views out there.
Well, you wouldn't believe the nasty emails we were receiving because we talked to guests who said they thought Trump had a good chance of winning. It's not my opinion, it's the opinion of the people I talked to.
Right, and the fact that you couldn't even voice those opinions without that kind of reaction in Canada, I think, says, unfortunately, a little bit about our views on free speech and tolerance in this country. Tolerance works two ways, and it's not just to be tolerant of pipeline protesters who want to shut down government hearings. We're supposed to be tolerant of that, but if you dare suggest something like, well, Donald Trump, yes, he made some big mistakes and faux pas, but his underlying message may have some validity to it. You should be able to say that without being categorized as a lunatic. So, here we are. The reality is we have a GOP sweep that we talked about. I didn't think it was the base case, but it's happened, and it's probably the best case for the United States, because the status quo of gridlock government isn't going to work anymore because there's too many problems. So, there are three different alternatives the Americans had: to stick with the same gridlock, go take a left turn with a Democratic sweep, or go with a Republican sweep. They've gone to the Republican sweep. The ball is now clearly in the Republican Party's court. But look, they can get tax reform through. They can get infrastructure through. I mean, they have a chance to really shake things up in a positive way if they so choose in the United States. And, we'll be watching now. It's not going to be, like we said last week, it's not going to be the type of administration that I assume David Suzuki and his followers are going to applaud. But, it is what it is. And as investors, we have to take a look at the opportunities and the risks that come along with that.
Well, the election of Trump's probably good news for the Alberta oil patch because he's in favor of the XL pipeline.
Well, that's what we talked about last week. And, just looking at our Canadian Insider Index, which just shot up early in day following the news, and as kind of giving back some of that ground now. I mean, I think we are going to have some volatility here while people sort out what Donald Trump's positions are and who's in his administration. But the big winner earlier on was Trans-Canada Pipeline. But we also saw in the Canadian Insider Index, we saw some of the laggards that had been struggling, such as steelmaker Can-Am Group. It's one of the top performers, up almost 7% today, on the hope that there's going to be some infrastructure spending. We've seen a nice rally in Noblest Health on the back of a relief rally in the healthcare industry that Hillary wasn't elected. And, you've got to look at the base metals, the industrial miners. They've enjoyed a bit of a boost here. First Quantum Minerals, Vancouver company, it's up, as we're talking about, 5%, because, the early vibes we're getting from Donald Trump is he's going to follow a pro-growth agenda, which if you're going to be building things, you're going to need base materials, just like they needed in China when they started building out their roads and airports. If Donald Trump decides he's going to have a race to see which country has the best airports in the world and the best highways, well, you need material to build all that. So, there's some of the winners in Canada, potential winners. I don't want to say they are winners because we don't know what he's going to do yet. I mean, let's face it, talk is one thing, but execution is another. So we're going to have to see if they can actually execute. If there is a risk he does get sidetracked by pet projects or pet initiatives, or just can't get his handle on how government works. There's all these risks. So, it's a new management team coming in, and of course you have to see how they operate. There are some clear losers, and bonds are the big losers. I mean, the 10-year yield got up to nearly 2%, and why is that? Well, he's talking about spending more money, and, it could be inflationary. So, bonds, the what I call the asset bubble trade is a loser here. Just sort of mindlessly sticking money into things you think are going to go up because there is no alternative. Well, all of a sudden there are alternatives. I just listed a number of them off that people are going to have to look at. Institutional investors and professional investors, they're not just going to be able to sit back and go, well, let's buy a preferred share. If interest rates are going up, it's going to get back to looking at companies that can identify growth opportunities in a very new world. So bonds are going to be a loser. Potentially the dividend trade, the real estate trade, just sort of plowing money into real estate around the world, thinking that real estate can only go up. Well, if real estate is now competing with other projects for capital, then real estate is going to have to offer investors a higher return. What does that mean? It means lower prices. So, and I'm not just talking about Vancouver, which has its own structural issues, but I'm just talking generally across the real estate industry where you've seen, cap rates falling. That they could come under pressure. Now we'll have to see. If there is an inflationary environment that picks up, some commercial real estate could do well. Some REITs could do well if they can pass along any inflation. But that all has to play out, and that's going to take a while for investors to figure that out and to see what exactly the implications of a Trump administration are. But there will be some new winners and losers, and it isn't the same old playbook that's been by the dips since the 2009 financial crisis. That playbook, rip that up, start over, and we're at the first chapter of it.
The Immigration Canada website melted down. Will Canadian real estate
I just think that's ridiculous. I just cannot stand that attitude. that smug Canadian attitude, oh, we're going to have a bunch of East Coast, West Coast liberals flooding into the country because Donald Trump won. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, maybe they tried to look at the website and might change their mind when they find out just how hard it is to immigrate to Canada.
Well, exactly, or get data from the Canadian government websites when you want it. And this is, as anyone in the financial markets know, at Friday mornings, you hit the Stats Canada website. You're lucky if it's working. So, but that's that's a small story. But this whole sort of smug attitude that we're going to be the oasis for people fleeing a Trump presidency. This isn't the Vietnam War, and life will go on. And I think that we hear that about a Trump presidency, but you don't hear people like me talking about, oh, there's going to be a wave of people trying to escape a Hillary presidency. We would be considered lunatics. But for some reason, if you're a left winger in Canada, you can pound the drum saying, oh, we're going to get all the intelligent, cafe liberals coming up here and fleeing a Donald Trump presidency. That's fine to say, but if you were to say, oh, we're going to have free enterprisers, coming up to British Columbia to escape Hillary, of course, people would think you're nuts.
And of course, the Californians now can legally get stoned on pot.
Well, there were so many referendums last night across the United States. I have to admit, I have, spent so much time just trying to think through the Trump sweep that I haven't really been able to catch up on all the different initiatives, and there are plenty of them. So, the landscape in the U.S. has changed, I'm sure, not only at the federal level, but I'm sure you've got these pockets of changes in the U.S. That will impact some particular stocks on the venture exchange if more marijuana rules have been loosened in the United States, then you could see some more speculative activity up here for sure. But I think the big plays will be in our bread and butter mining and maybe to a lesser extent energy infrastructure. These are where we could see some action. So we'll have to stay tuned and see how we do on Mr. Trump's priority list. The other interesting aspect of it will be the international trade, international relations. This is a major reset. We can expect, there's at least two dimensions to, I think, Trump foreign policy that clearly we need more information on. But on the one hand, he's not seeking, he said in his acceptance speech, he wants partnership, not conflict. So that will be a shakeup to all the war hawks in Washington, both on the left and the right. And there were quite a few on the left that bought into the George Bush doctrine. And I think you see that playing out in the Middle East right now. Obama wasn't as avid interventionist as the Bush administration was, but they were still in trying to promote American interests through the military, and Trump wants to take a different approach, I believe. So, you'll have likely pressure to remove sanctions on Russia. That will help Canadian companies that have business dealings in Russia. There are a number. I'm not going to say any names on the air here, but there are some that could benefit in the oil patch. A few, not a lot, but that's certainly one to keep your eye on. But the other aspect of it is trade, and it's not clear what's going to happen. One of the stocks in the Canadian Insider Index is Linamar, an auto parts maker. It's down 5% today. So there is uncertainty on what he's going to do on the trade front, and it'll be hard for those stocks to get traction until we know a bit more. Is he really going to rip up the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal, which is actually very advantageous to the United States? So, and you can't, it's not easy to renegotiate those deals. So that's a big one, and we'll have to keep our eyes on that. And, it will be very hard for those companies, that they're going to be left in suspended animation for a while, and so initially they're going to be losers as well. Now it may turn, that story may turn out fine, but we don't know yet, and the market will, apply the Napoleonic Code, and these companies will have to, prove that they can grow their earnings in the new Trump era, and but we're just going to have to wait and see. There's very little that these company management can do. They've positioned themselves in many of these firms. They've diversified their operations globally, and many have operations in the United States. So they're just going to have to wait and see how Donald Trump's going to write the trade playbook for the United States. It's probably the biggest challenge he's got.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon and the possible effects on business that the Donald Trump administration will have. Well, if sanctions against Russia are eased, perhaps the first winners will be Canadian and U.S. pork producers, because Russia was their biggest export market, and as soon as they put sanctions against Russia concerning Ukraine, the first thing they did was cancel all these contracts with Canadian and American pork producers, costing them $3 billion. So right there, you could see the benefit to North America if they eased relations with Russia.
Well, look, if Donald Trump starts taking a hard line on trade, any type of relief that gets capital and, goods moving internationally will be welcome. So, you have to take the good with the bad, and if trade kind of trade deals get put in, back into play in a negative way, having to renegotiate them if sanctions, are reduced, and that's a bit of an offset. But we'll have to see. Yeah, but certainly, the relations with Russia will probably improve, and that's probably a good thing. Now, on the other side of the world, in Asia, it's a little different story. It'll be interesting to see how a Trump administration deals with China's growing presence in the United States. I think American allies are a little concerned about, will America still have their back? Shinzo Abe did write a very nice congratulatory letter to Donald Trump last night. And, but I think the Japanese are probably a little edgy what this new relationship means. China is a very assertive neighbor. And so this is a bit of maybe a wake up call to Japan in some sense that the landscape is changing, and they may need to take more responsibility for their defense, and not just their defense, but their ability to leverage power in that region. And so we'll have to see how it plays out, but it's certainly going to be interesting to watch. I think that we could see new developments and new trends there. It'll be just fascinating to see how Donald Trump deals with China. I mean, China is, on the one hand, a huge competitor to the United States, but I think Donald Trump also probably sees it as, kind of a land of opportunity for American companies, and he's probably not very happy with the current access they have to Chinese markets. So you could see a coalition of the United States and Japan, trying to pry open the Chinese market. So we don't know how it's going to play out. It will be very, very fascinating to watch.
Do you think he'll do much with the U.S. banking industry?
I haven't heard him talk too much about that, except for he's not interested in hearing their, he's not interested in their in their lobbyists, and we'll have to see how long that lasts. But, I just think he's got bigger fish to fry. I mean, he's got, taking on these trade deals, relationships with China, Mexico, these are big files, and that I don't see financial system reform being up on the A list of things to do. I see immigration, trade as the prime areas. And I think he'll try and go for some quick wins like the XL pipeline, because you start building that, you'll get the high-paying jobs and right through his base. And we keep hearing from the left, what a great recovery this has been, but these jobs have all, in the United States, they've been lousy jobs, they've been part-time jobs, and the XL pipeline extension provides some very high-paying blue-collar jobs. So I would not be surprised to see that get a fast track by the Trump administration, have that going, before midterm elections next time around, mind you. And it's very important. In 2 years, there are a number of Senate Democrat seats, I believe, up for re-election. If there's enough of them, and I have to check, these Republicans could be within striking distance of a 2/3 majority in the Senate, and that would give a Trump administration even more power. So just if it hasn't been a shell shock enough for the left in North America, well, there's another thought to look at a couple of years from now. Of course, the Republicans only have one seat in the Senate as well, so the left can also look forward to the hope that they could easily, take back the Senate if they could pick up one seat. But they have a number of seats of their own they're going to have to defend in 2 years.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
It was great to be back.
My guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.